for George W. Bush, and David Axelrod, former Obama senior advisor. Welcome to both of you. I want to start with a question for both of you. This has been a remarkable year, the first year in what's been the start of a very unconventional presidency. You both worked for the two previous presidents, Obama and Bush. David, let me start with you. In just the past few weeks, President Obama has been, I think it's fair to say, increasingly vocal in some of his criticisms of President Trump, not just about policy, but also about the tone and tenor. Recently, he even invoked Nazi Germany in reference to the current political climate. Does President Obama see a danger in the Trump presidency?
Well, look, I think that the big concern, elections happen and policies change, and that is democracy. But democracy also depends on sustaining our institutions. One of the things that President Obama most appreciated, and certainly I did, was how President Bush handled the transition from one presidency to the next and the period after. We weren't particularly kind to President Bush in the campaign, but he kept his counsel as to what his views were after he left office. But what you see now is a president who delivers hammer blows again and again to fundamental institutions of our democracy and adds to cynicism about our democratic institutions. And I think that's what President Obama was speaking to, and President Bush has spoken to it as well. Policies change, views are different, that's part of the system, but our institutions have to be sustained, and that's something that this president doesn't always appreciate.
And Mark, your former boss, George W. Bush, did something unusual for him. He made comments in the wake of the white supremacist rally in Charlottesville that seemed in some ways to be a rebuke of President Trump. Take a listen.
Bigotry seems emboldened. Our politics seems more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and outright fabrication. We've seen nationalism distorted into nativism. We've forgotten the dynamism that immigration has always brought to America.
And since he left office, President Bush has really tried to stay out of politics. What is he thinking when he says something like that?
Well, you're right, Jake. He's been staying off the radar screen to his credit, I think. But I think this just testifies to how strongly he felt about that moment. It's interesting. When you look at the speeches of George W. Bush in 1999 and Barack Obama in 2007, if you mixed them up and handed them to somebody, you couldn't tell which was which, because they both campaigned very strongly on the notion of changing the tone in Washington and had a real respect for the institution of the White House. I mean, that's one thing that we've seen with Donald Trump, is that I think that both Barack Obama and George W. Bush worry about the institution of the White House itself and what's happening to it right now. And in a lot of ways, when it comes to tone and tenor of the White House, we've really kind of clawed our way to the bottom.
Let me ask you, the President Trump had an ambitious legislative agenda coming into office. So far, he's been able to deliver on only one major legislative victory, this tax bill. And there have been a string of high-profile failures along the way. The Republicans control Congress. They control the White House. Why do you think this president has had difficulties that President Obama didn't have with the Democratic Congress and President Bush didn't have with the Republican Congress?
Well, I was surprised that he didn't do what both Barack Obama and George W. Bush and most presidents do, which is find an issue where you can reach across the aisle, at least when you start your presidency. And that's why I thought that he might start with something like infrastructure. Instead, he went, right to the base, right to strip out Obamacare, and really, just poked a sharp stick in the eye of the Democrats. So the problem after that is that once that happened, the Democrats said, well, why should we want to work with you if that's the way you want to start this presidency? But I don't think we can underestimate, the tax bill is a big deal. It's a big win for the Republicans and for Donald Trump. And, they got it done before the end of the year and maybe rushed it through too quickly. Maybe we'll see that in the long run. But right now, at the end of the year, Republicans can say we have relative peace, we have relative prosperity, and for us, given the way things started out this year, we're happy to end on this note.
David, President Trump has made it his mission to unravel President Obama's legacy, including so many things you worked on, including Obamacare. He succeeded in repealing the individual mandate, removing the United States from the Paris Climate Accords, working to decertify the Iran deal. how does that look from the perspective of President Obama and people like you who worked closely with President Obama to get this agenda passed?
You know, Jake, I'm always reluctant to speak of it in terms of the Obama legacy because it makes it personal to him, and these issues shouldn't be personal to him. They should be considered in the context of their impact on the country and their impact on people. So when you talk about striking the mandate in this bill, which the president touted as one of its great features, although he said he didn't want to talk about it until after it passed because he knew it wouldn't be popular. It wouldn't be popular because 13 million people will lose their health care, estimated, as a result of that. That's concerning. Talking about undermining the Iran agreement is concerning, not because it was an Obama legacy, but because it could be very destabilizing and lead us into a greater period of conflict. And so all of these policies have implications that are serious. But I just want to say, I am not one who says that the president hasn't been impactful because he hasn't been able to pass major legislation until this tax bill. This tax bill is incredibly impactful, and we'll see if it's impactful in a positive way. I have my views on that. But certainly the steps he's taken to withdraw America from, as you mentioned, Paris,